everyone, we are back with another Nancy Drew book cover ranking video. I think you guys really enjoyed the first video I did in this series covering books number 1 through 5. I shared with you guys all of the alternate covers from all of the Nancy Drew books. I went through and talked about the things I liked about them, which ones I didn't like, and I ranked which one was my favorite. So I do plan on making more of these videos. So today we're going to be covering books 6 through 10. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're covering book number 6. This one is called The Secret of Redgate Farm. So for this one, we actually only have 2 book covers for this book. The first one we have is from Russell Tandy. This one was from the 1930 to 1950 press run. And we also have the Bill Gillies cover. This one was from 1950 to 1961. So you may notice we don't have a cover from Rudy Nappy for this one. So we only have the 2 original artists for this one. So starting off with the Tandy cover, this one I know exactly the scene that it is referring to. Now I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a big fan of this cover. I just feel like there's not a lot to it. Like it feels very flat, very kind of like one-dimensional. Nancy is overlooking the cult, and honestly when I look at this, it kind of gives me some really bad vibes of like the imagery. It kind of reminds me a lot of another cult known for wearing white hoods, and so I just felt like even though this time period came way before that, I just can't unsee that imagery in my mind. And even though the scene is supposed to be depicting like a nighttime scene, the sky is very light still. We do see a full moon kind of peeking out from below the trees, but I just kind of felt like this one didn't really capture much of like the dark kind of essence of the cover, and overall this one just wasn't my favorite. It just kind of felt a little boring, a little flat to me. So moving on to the Gillies cover, this one I think is a little bit more interesting because we once again do have Nancy kind of peering over like a tree, kind of looking at these cult members, but we only see about 2 of them, and they seem to be entering into a cave, which I think is just a little bit more of an interesting composition because we don't know who are these people, where are they going, why are they going into the cave, why is Nancy watching them? And this one just kind of gave me a little bit more of a mysterious vibe to it rather than the Tandy cover where Nancy's just kind of like watching people in a field. And I also like the little details included, like with the rocks and the trees and the shrubbery, and the overall surroundings just feel a little bit more filled out for my liking. So I think this one's pretty clear which one is my favorite. So I'm gonna give this one to Bill Gillies as the winner between these 2 covers. Moving on to book number 7, we have The Clue in the Diary. And once again, we only have 2 covers for this book. We have Russell Tandy's cover and we have Bill Gillies. So starting with Tandy's cover, this one we have Nancy bending over at the waist, reaching for a notebook or a diary that is on the ground. We also see in the background there is a burning house. Looks to be about like a 2-story, kind of like a colonial style type house. And we also see firemen working in the background, working to put out the flames. But if you look closely, it also seems we have a mysterious figure on the right side lurking in the bushes. So this one I think has a lot going on for it. We can see several different things kind of all going on at the same time. We've got Nancy reaching for something, the firemen working to put out the flames, the mysterious figure in the bushes, and to me I feel like it creates more of an interesting composition, especially since we can tell that it is daytime, but you see the billowing of the smoke and the flames and the fire. I really do actually quite like this book cover, and you guys know I'm typically not a fan of Tandy's covers. Not that I don't like them, but they just don't tend to be my favorite. So moving on to the Gillies cover, this is actually the cover that was on the book that I read, so this is the one I'm more used to seeing. So in this one we do see several similar things, but just a little bit of a different take. So we have Nancy, she's actually facing the viewer, and she, as always, has that, as I lovingly call it, the blow-up doll expression on her face. She has a very shocked kind of face that a lot of the Bill Gillies covers has. Once again, we see the scene of the burning house in the background. The house does seem to be a little bit more of a modest looking house than how I remember it being described in the story. And then of course we do have another figure kind of lurking in the bushes, also facing the viewer. And then once again we have the journal, but it's all the way to the like lower left hand corner, which you might almost miss if you were not really searching for it. And we do not have any firemen visible in this composition, so it's definitely a little bit more straightforward in the Gillies cover. However, I think that for me, I actually quite like the Tandy cover more. I feel like we just get a little bit more of context for everything going on. I also think that the house seems a little bit more accurate to the description in the book as well, and we don't have Nancy doing that blow-up doll face, which honestly, every time I see it, that's the only thing I can think of. So for me, I'm actually going to give this one to Tandy for the first time ever. So next, moving on to book number 8, we have Nancy's Mysterious Letter. We do have all 3 different covers for this one. We have Russell Tandy, Bill Gillies, and Rudy Nappy. So starting off with Tandy's cover. So to be completely honest with you guys, it has been a long time since I have read this book, and I cannot for the life of me remember the exact scene that Tandy's cover is depicting. I have an idea, but I just don't know if that is the scene that I'm remembering or not. So we see Nancy in a fur coat. She appears to be in a very crowded area with a lot of people. We see a couple kind of looking behind her, and then we also see Nancy walking in the direction of 2 other figures on the left side of the cover. Moving on to Gillies' cover, we have, once again, Nancy has a very shocked and expressive look on her face. She seems to be talking to an older gentleman to her right who is holding a letter in his hand, and of course Nancy is looking at the letter. We also see a house behind her that appears to be a cold, wintry type of setting. And moving on to Nappy, we have another one of his covers that definitely fits along with his typical cover designs, and it's kind of like I like to call it like a composite type of cover design, where it's more of like a montage, or not really necessarily depicting an actual scene, but we kind of have like layered elements. So we see Nancy in a beautiful pink trench coat, and then we see a letter layered behind her and an envelope. This one, I definitely think it gives a lot more mysterious vibes to me, in my opinion, with having the dark background and just having very limited elements in the actual composition. For me, I definitely think that the Tandy cover is my least favorite, just because there's not much tying the title to the mystery. It kind of just looks like a random scene that was selected that they decided to put on the cover, but we don't actually see the letter itself, and we do see those included on Gillies and Nappy's covers. I do think in the end though, my favorite cover is the Nappy cover. I tend to really like a lot of his. I find that they just, to me, I'm drawn to them not only because a lot of them are the covers I'm most familiar with, but I also do think they are more of the more successful covers at conveying mystery, whereas I feel like in Gillies, he also tends to really just show like a scene and then Nancy being very expressive. But I feel like the mystery element is kind of lost when we don't really have that kind of dark vibes to it, and I always find that Nappy really does that very well. So I am going to give my favorite to the Rudy Nappy cover. Moving on to book number 9, we have The Sign of the Twisted Candles. We have all 3 covers as well. So starting off with Russell Tandy's cover. This one I really like right off the bat. It is another one of those type of scenes where we see several characters. We see Nancy, we see one of the older gentlemen, he is a main character in the mystery, and then we also see what appears to be a villain eavesdropping on the conversation that Nancy is having with the older man. We do actually see the Twisted Candles included as well, and we also see a portrait hanging over what appears to be a mantle or a fireplace. Moving on to Gilly's cover, we have Nancy, who appears to be inside, possibly on the second floor of a building. She is looking through a window down below to a man that looks to be digging in the backyard. We don't have a lot of context for what is going on in this scene. It could kind of honestly be anything, and I don't remember specifically this scene from the book. Nancy doesn't look nearly as expressive as she usually does in the Gilly's covers. However, she does have quite a puzzled look on her face in this cover. And then moving on to Nappy, once again we see that kind of like composite style type of cover that he's very well known for. Mainly in this one we see Nancy looking up to a bearded old man, and there is a twisted candle in between them. Typically I really enjoy Nappy's style. However, with this one, something about the position of Nancy kind of like looking over her shoulder, looking upward at the disembodied figure of the old man, something about it just balance wise doesn't really sit well with me. I kind of feel like Nancy could be a little bit bigger. I think that the older man, he should be a little bit bigger as well. So this one, stylistically, I like the idea behind it. I just don't like necessarily the actual composition. I feel like it was almost there, but it feels like there's too much negative space in this cover for me, especially right above the area of Nancy's head. I wish that she was either a little bit larger, or maybe there was just a slight kind of whisper of a detail behind her, maybe like a room or like the tower or something like that, because it just feels a little bit too empty for me to pick that one as my favorite. So I'm actually going to give the winner to Tandy's cover for this book. I just feel like we have slightly more context, a little bit more of like a complete idea. Like obviously we can tell Nancy and the bearded man are aware of each other's presence. However, the villain eavesdropping definitely adds a little bit more of a visual interest to it, especially since Nancy's kind of looking in the direction of the villain. It's almost like she's aware that he is there. So I am going to give the winning cover to Tandy this time. And moving on to the last book for this video, we are looking at Password to Larkspur Lane, and once again we have all three artists in this one. This one, the first thing that strikes me as I'm looking at all three of these covers together is that this is probably one of the most similar book cover designs from artist to artist. So starting off with Tandy, we see Nancy in a bright red dress. She appears to be kneeling down, speaking to an elderly woman in a wheelchair through a fence. We see a large, kind of like a plantation style building in the background, and a man that appears to be running towards Nancy and the woman. We also have a very vibrant yellow skyline. It's almost as if we are in the golden hour, and just before dusk, Nancy is trying to get a message from the elderly woman pointing towards the building. So then if we move on to the Gilly's cover, really a lot of the items are nearly identical in composition, in position, in context as well. We really see almost everything exactly the same. Nancy's also kneeling, her outfit's changed, her hair color's changed, but we do still have the older woman in the wheelchair pointing towards the house, and a very similar man running towards the two of them. And the sky is more of just a clear blue sky in this composition. And moving on to Nappy's cover, once again we have all the same elements, but we do have a slight flip of the composition. So instead of the building being on the left side, we see it on the right side. It's a little bit more in the background compared to the last two covers. However, we do still have Nancy leaning against the fence speaking to a elderly woman in a wheelchair, and once again we have a man lurking in the background. The one thing I really love the most about this cover is how the sky really reflects the mysterious vibe of the book. I remember this one as being one of my favorite Nancy Drew books just because it had so many chilling moments and scenes in the story, and I really feel like the other two, the sky makes such a difference with the overall vibe of the atmosphere. And the first one, like I said, it's almost almost like golden hour. It's almost like beautiful, like warm wash of sunlight over everything before the sun sets. And then in the second one, it's very like, could be the middle of a spring day. It's just beautiful and clear. However, the dark, cloudy striations on Nappy's cover just really adds to the overall vibe with still having all of the same elements. We have the building, we have the man, we have Nancy, we have the old woman. It has all of these same elements, but to me, this one is the most successful for the story. Just every time I see this one, it makes you wonder, what is she trying to convey to Nancy? She's trying to tell her something, but it's a little bit more subtle in Nappy's cover because instead of the woman facing the man that is running towards her, she has her back turned to him and she's almost bringing her hand up to whisper to Nancy. She's trying to secretly convey something to Nancy, which I think is a little bit more interesting rather than having the woman just sticking her arm out pointing straight at the man. You know, she's a little bit more covert with her actions, and I think that's definitely very true when it comes to the story itself. And also when we see the man, he's more not actually running towards Nancy and the woman. He's kind of more just standing, you know, several yards back. There's a good amount of distance between the two of them, and he's kind of more just standing there, kind of just surveying what's going on. So to me, I think it's very obvious at this point that I am going to give the winning cover once again to Rudy Nappy. Now, I know you guys think I may be very biased when it comes to Rudy Nappy's, but I do think that a lot of his compositions are, in my mind, some of the more successful ones, but he also has a really big advantage when it comes to this because he has a lot of works before him to look at, see what has already been done, and then take that and make it more to his style. So of course we have a lot of work from Russell Tandy and Bill Gillies, so I definitely think that him being the last artist in a lot of the Nancy Drew books, it makes sense that his, in my mind, would be the most successful. But don't get me wrong, I don't think that he's always the winner, and I think a lot of these books coming up that I will be covering in my next book cover ranking videos might surprise you on who I think the winner is. But once again, throughout this one, Rudy Nappy definitely seemed to reign supreme as far as my preferences go. So that is it for this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Definitely let me know, did you agree with my thoughts or do you like other covers more? Definitely leave your rankings below. I love to know which ones are your favorites or what you thought worked or didn't work in the other compositions. I always love talking about those with a lot of people and seeing, out of all of these books, which one do you think were the most successful covers? So that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe. You can follow me on social media. Links are below, and until my next video, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.